looks like the recording started. I must have accidentally touched the button here or something. This is very difficult when the wind is blowing. So much noise on the microphone, I don't even know if my voice is getting through on there. I'm going to have to try to pick a day when it's not so damn windy. Anyway, hello and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering, and I've decided that since this is the Okanagan Reader, I would show you some of the Okanagan. You can just see a bluff there on the other side of the lake, and that is approximately where the ice dam was when the glaciers were melting 11,000 years ago. So, today's reading is chapter 29 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy, and in chapter 29, we're more than halfway through the book now, and the best is yet to come. I thought that since this is the Okanagan Reader, I would get out of the studio and out into the Okanagan. So there it is. As you can see by the water on that lake, it is quite windy here. Now, in chapter 29, we witness the joining of the two comets. Elgin and Fran are in the bubble thanks to the second lottery, along with Maria and her father Tomas, and Buzzard decides to go outside to watch. Buzzard would, wouldn't he? Okay, so I guess that'll do for this experiment in al fresco recording. We'll have to see how it turns out. Hello. Well, it looks like the recording started. I must have accidentally touched the button here or something. This is very difficult when the wind is blowing. So much noise on the microphone, I don't even know if my voice is getting through on there. I'm going to have to try to pick a day when it's not so damn windy. Anyway, hello and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering, and I've decided that since this is the Okanagan Reader, I would show you some of the Okanagan. You can just see a bluff there on the other side of the lake, and that is approximately where the ice dam was when the glaciers were melting 11,000 years ago. So, today's reading is chapter 29 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy, and in chapter 29, we're more than halfway through the book now, and the best is yet to come. I thought that since this is the Okanagan Reader, I would get out of the studio and out into the Okanagan. So there it is. As you can see by the water on that lake, it is quite windy here. Now, in chapter 29, we witness the joining of the two comets. Elgin and Fran are in the bubble thanks to the second lottery, along with Maria and her father Tomas, and Buzzard decides to go outside to watch. Buzzard would, wouldn't he? Okay, so I guess that'll do for this experiment in al fresco recording. We'll have to see how it turns out. Chapter 29, The Joining. Stanton's bubble was a lively place on the day. Exactly 220 people were in there waiting for contact, and they were in a festive mood. Elgin and Francis were there with Maria and her father Tomas, who was saying, "I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Thank you for everything you've done for Maria." He looked at his daughter, who was there at the same level as the adults. Microgravity has unexpected advantages. "You've done so much for her." Tomas was including both of them, but he was obviously talking to Francis. "And your kindness to her is a kindness to me." Elgin nodded, accepting it for what it was. He didn't feel he had done much, but that didn't mean it wasn't important to Tomas. Fran spoke for both of them, saying, "We're happy to do it, Tomas." She looked at Maria, who was on the verge of rolling her eyes at this adult stuff. Maria makes it easy to do. You've raised a wonderful daughter." Now the eyes did roll. Fran laughed, and so did Thomas. "What's going on?" Their communicators piped up. It was the lottery woman and the two winners, who were connected to them for the event. Along with her husband, they were in the square watching it on the big screens, and they had a private connection with the 4 people they had sent to the bubble. "What's so funny?" "Nothing," said Fran. "Maria's just telling us to stop acting like grown-ups." Thomas interjected. "Thank you again for the ticket. It means a lot to be here with Maria like this." "Never you mind that," said the woman gruffly. "It meant a lot to me to see my ticket get used. Used well. Oh, you know what I mean." "And me too," said Maria. "I mean, I'm glad my daddy's here too, thank you." "And of course," added Fran, meaning to thank the other 2 for their tickets. "Oh." "What?" "Oh, I'm sorry," said Fran. "There's someone outside the bubble in a pressure suit." "Who?" "I don't know, but they seem to be looking in here." "What are they looking for?" "I don't know, Buzzard!" cried Maria. "It's Buzzard!" Others took up the call, especially the other children in the bubble. They were waving and laughing and calling his name, and they all rushed over to the curving shell closest to the figure outside. Even in a pressure suit, Buzzard was recognizable by the way he moved, by the way he flew. These kids, who watched him play flashball, who idolized him for his unique style, were now inside the sphere while he was outside. He waved and did some swoops for them, provoking cheering and more excited laughter. Elgin got over his surprise. He realized that Buzzard must be looking for them, so he started waving both wings over his head until he caught his attention. When he spotted them, Buzzard reached up and tapped his ear, indicating he wanted to talk. Elgin found the right frequency and said, "What's up? What are you doing?" "Taking some pictures," said Buzzard. "Pictures. I'm going to take some pictures." He held up a bulky camera. "But you didn't have to go outside to do that." Not only were there plenty of cameras already deployed for the event, fixed at many strategic locations and flying in the space around the contact point, Buzzard could have easily requisitioned more and put them wherever he wanted. "Got to take these myself, out here myself." "Then why didn't you get a little excursion pod? You could go out there and be safer and more comfortable. You could take all the pictures you want." "Too crowded, too cramped, not enough room to move around." Buzzard did a couple of swoops and the kids cheered. Elgin understood. He hated to see his friend taking more risks than he had to, but he knew why he had to do it that way. "Okay," he said, "I get it. But you just be careful, all right?" "Careful. Be careful. I'll be careful." Buzzard waved and turned around, then began moving directly away from the comet. He rapidly shrank in apparent size, then disappeared. Elgin and the others watched in silence as he went, but Maria broke it when she came back from the crowd of kids. "That was so cool," she said. "Buzzard is so cool." "Yes, he is," said Fran. "We all think so anyway." "Everybody thinks so," Maria insisted. Elgin couldn't help himself. He got on the radio and called Buzzard again. "Buzzard? Sorry to bother you, but could you call in once in a while to let us know you're okay?" "Okay," came Buzzard's voice, just as loud and clear as it was when they could see him. "I'll call. Call some more. Already calling Stanton. Already." "Oh, okay. If you're already calling, then don't bother." "I'll call you too. Call Stanton, call you, same time." "Right, okay," said Elgin. "We'll wait for your call then." He looked at his companions and shrugged. He didn't need to relay what had been said because they all, the 4 here and the 4 in the square, were sharing their communications. So Elgin shrugged and grinned, shaking his head. That Buzzard, eh? "I wonder why he needed to go out personally like that," Fran said. "Maybe Stanton knows." She called him, but he didn't know either. "I know it's something special," he said. "Buzzard couldn't stop grinning while he was telling me, but he wouldn't tell me what it was." "Oh, well," said Fran, "it was worth a try." She added, "Say, are you with anyone?" "No," said Stanton. "I never thought about it. I just assumed I'd be with you guys, and Buzzard, of course. So here I am on my own." Would you like some company? Sure, I guess, although there's no shortage of people here. She could hear the smile in his voice. You know what I mean, she said. Hold on a minute. She called the lottery woman and her party. They said they'd be glad to have Stanton join them, so she filled him in on their story. They'd be honored to be in the company of the man who's responsible for this whole thing. Okay, said Stanton. How do I find them? They know what you look like. Just fly up above everybody and they'll spot you. After a brief pause, Stanton said, I'm up here, but there's a lot of bodies down there. They say they're toward the red end, closer to the orange side. Ah, there they are. They're waving. Good. We're sharing a common frequency, so we'll all be able to talk when you get there. When she looked at Elgin, he was smiling one of his pride, smiled at her. Tomas's eyes were shining, and Maria looked as if she had just learned something important. What? She asked. Oh, nothing, said Elgin, sharing a look with Maria and her dad. Anyone would have done that, right? They agreed equally facetiously. He gave Fran a wink, then he checked the monitors at the back of the bubble. It was less than a half hour to contact. There was a countdown, of course. Some people started at 1 minute, others at 30 seconds, but the majority came in at 10 seconds. They all shouted 0 in unison, then there was a collective holding of breath. All through the square and the bubble, people were poised in poses of anticipation, their faces showing excitement, anxiety, and even fear. Even though they knew rationally that there was insignificant danger, for some there was that grain of doubt. They could be wrong. This might be a horrible mistake, and the coming moments could hold destruction and death. Reality was anticlimactic. Nothing seemed to happen for the first few moments. The monitors showed the two comets sinking into each other. Clocks ticked off the time. Dials tallied up the distance, but there was a lack of any physical sensations. Long after they had all begun to breathe again, and conversation had recommenced, there was still nothing to see or hear. Finally, the monitors showed the snow beginning to rumple up visibly ahead of the growing circle of contact, provoking a relieved roar of chatter. Then, for those who were paying attention, there was an almost undetectable motion. It was so small that most people didn't notice it, simply compensating for it automatically. But those who were expecting it, or who were more attuned to the subtleties, detected a slight tendency to drift forward. Their comet was slowing down due to the collision, but their bodies continued moving at the same speed. The result was an apparent motion relative to the comet of well under a meter a second. It was very easy to miss by unconsciously adjusting the small wing flaps. The noises started with a distant thump. It was quiet, to the point of being subliminal, and more felt than heard. It was followed by more, with a trend toward increasing intensity as the comets plowed more deeply into each other. The compression between them wasn't smooth, rather building and releasing in a series of seismic events. It happened more frequently as the collision progressed, until the noise became a steady roar, and people made sure their hearing protection was in place. Elgin didn't know when it started, but everyone was looking at the monitors now, especially one showing the back end of the small comet. The area was illuminated by some strong floodlights, and they could see the surface clearly. Something appeared to have lifted off of it, and was rising away. Elgin instinctively glanced up, but he couldn't see anything with the bulge of the comet in the way. Floodlights? There? Muttered Elgin. When did that happen? He was talking to himself, but Stanton responded. That's what I'd like to know, he said. You didn't know about them? No, said Stanton. I knew he was up to something, but he wouldn't tell me, and he must have sworn everyone who helped him to secrecy. You asked around? I sure did. I wanted to know what he was grinning about. He grinned at me too, said Elgin. When he showed me his summary page, he couldn't stop grinning. It made me feel as if there was something I missed, but it was all right. Same here, said Stanton. I don't have your talent, but it looked fine to me, too. There was an awed gasp from the people watching the monitors. When Elgin looked, it took a moment to see what he was looking at, and then he couldn't believe it. The material that had been rising off the surface before was coalescing into a definite shape, and it was fantastic. Instead of just a cloud of snow puffing off the comet, it now appeared to be forming into a toroidal object. In a few more seconds it clicked over from an impression to a certainty. The image that popped into Elgin's mind was of a smoke ring. There was a smoke ring rising off the back end of the small comet, where someone, most likely Buzzard, had arranged for floodlights. And now he was out there in a pressure suit taking pictures with a handheld camera. "That bugger," said Stanton. "He knew this was going to happen. That's why he was grinning. He knew and we didn't." As one, Elgin and Stanton recalled Buzzard's paper. Now that they knew what to look for, it was right there. The interaction between the faster shock wave going through the center of the comet and the slower one going around the outside was almost certain to blow off material, and there was a chance it could form this ring. "That bugger," said Stanton again, and you could hear the pride in his voice. The ring continued to rise away, and it seemed to continue to get more clearly defined as it rose. They could see its rotation, although it was slow. It was curling in on itself, the constant motion keeping it wrapped together. Then Buzzard called. "Switch to my camera," he said. "One of the monitors. Switch one to my camera." "I've got it," said Elgin. The monitors in both places were showing the same things, so changing one would change them both. He chose one that wasn't showing much, and switched it over to Buzzard's feed, provoking another gasp and a swell of excited conversation. Buzzard must not have flown all the way around the back end of the small comet, because his point of view showed the smoke ring just becoming visible past its limb. He must have been only about 20 kilometers out, because they could see a lot of the small comet and one edge of the smoke ring, which was slowly coming more into view. "See it? Do you see it? Can you see it?" said Buzzard, his voice clotted with suppressed chortling. "We can see it, Buzzard. You're coming through fine," said Elgin. "It looks great in the square, too," said Stanton. "Congratulations, Buzzard." There was another commotion as people spotted more material lifting off the surface, and Buzzard, who must have been monitoring it in his suit, opened his comms again. "There'll be more smoke rings," he said, before laughter took over his voice. He tried to speak several times, but couldn't, so he switched off. The second one wasn't a ring. It was just a disorganized puff of snow, as were the next few. And the first one wasn't a perfect ring after all. It wasn't exactly circular, and it was thicker on the near side than it was on the far side, where it thinned to near invisibility. It still looked good, though, as it emerged from behind the comet. And over the next hour, several more rings did form, although none of them was as big as the first, and most of them were even less well formed. But there was one that was nearly perfect. Toward the end, as the puffs were getting weaker and farther apart, one clear, circular one rose up and sailed away. The people all cheered and applauded, and Buzzard's immortality was assured. The roar of the joining had reached a peak and was diminishing. Buzzard's camera had recorded his last smoke ring coming out from behind the comet. Elgin said, "I think that's it, Buzzard. You can come back in now." While Buzzard made his way back, the roar continued lessening until it became discrete noises again, and those got quieter and farther apart. They did get to see the rumple lines spreading out on the small comet, but not on their own. It never did reach their horizon. There wasn't much more to see from the bubble, so people started making motions to leave. They might as well spend the rest of the day with everyone else in the square. But as they began to move toward the door, the children protested that they didn't want to go yet. Even though they had been cooped up in there for hours, the kids didn't want to leave until Buzzard got back. When he appeared, they cheered and rushed over to the outer wall again. Once he was visible, it took only another few minutes to get there. He flew right up to the bubble, holding his camera over his head like a trophy, while the children laughed and applauded. He did a few swoops for them, and then headed off for the entrance. Then the kids were ready to leave, and they poured out into the hallway, talking loudly and practicing Buzzard swoop. Flying back to the square, Elgin was quiet. Fran flew silently beside him for a while, but eventually she asked him, "What's up?" His eyes came back to focus. He didn't realize it, but he'd been flying automatically, just like the man in the corridor on the first day Stanton took him out. "Nothing," he said. "I was pretty worried there about Buzzard. It surprised me." "Me too," said Fran. "My heart was in my mouth." She touched her lips, remembering. "Yeah, if he'd said something, there'd have been time to get used to it." Elgin shook his head in wonderment. How did he manage to keep it secret, something that spectacular? "Are you talking about his excursion now, or his smoke ring?" Elgin flew silently for a few tens of meters. When he spoke, it was in confessional tones. "I think you've hit the nail on the head, Fran. It's really the smoke rings that are bothering me." "How so?" she asked. "You're not envious, are you?" "Oh, no. I'm proud of Buzzard, nearly as proud as Stanton." "That's pretty proud," she said with a grin. "It is," he said, "but it's true." His smile faded, and he said, "No, I'm ashamed to admit that it bothers me that I couldn't see the smoke ring coming." "But you're not the only one. Not even Stanton saw it." "I know, but nobody else has my talent. I should have been able to see it coming." He looked at her, astounded. "He showed me his work, and I still didn't see it." She flipped around and coasted backwards so she could look right at him. "But you knew that it was right, didn't you?" "Yeah, but—" "You knew," she insisted. "That has always been your talent." That brought Elgin up short. He stopped flying and hung there, a stunned look on his face being gradually replaced by revelation and relief. Fran had drifted on when he stopped, but she quickly fluttered back to him. He hugged her, then held her at arm's length, beaming. "You are definitely the smartest woman in the universe," he said. "That, of course, is highly unlikely," she replied, "not least because you haven't met all the women in the universe." "I don't have to meet all the women. I already know that you're the smartest, so I don't need to waste any more time looking." She was blushing and smiling happily. "That's irrational," she said, "but I'll let it go for now if you tell me what I said that was so clever." "You reminded me what my talent is," he said enthusiastically. "It's for knowing when something is right." He clapped his hands sharply. "And that's it." "Yes?" "Well, I was falling into the trap of thinking that it meant more than it does." He brushed it away. "Knowing when something is right doesn't mean always being right. It doesn't mean knowing what's right and wrong." He grabbed her by the shoulders. "And it doesn't mean knowing what's going to happen." If there'd been gravity, he'd have danced for joy. "Speaking of being clever," she said, "you're pretty smart yourself." "Only because of you," he said. "Thanks to you, I've got my feet back on the ground." They both glanced down, then laughed. "Thanks to you, I know my talent is still okay. I can still be useful to the comet." "There's a lot more to you than your talent," she said sternly. "I know," he said, starting up again. They flew down the corridor, holding hands. "There must be something to keep you hanging around. I just hope I don't lose that." "You're about as likely to lose that as you are to lose your talent," she said, squeezing his hand. "It's as much a part of you as your blood and your bones." He squeezed back. "You say it, and I know it's right." When they got to the square, it was roaring with conversation. It was tempting to put their hearing protection back on, but it wasn't that bad. They soared up to a good vantage point and looked for Stanton's group in the red-orange corner. They must have been waiting for them because they started waving right away, so Fran and Elgin flew down to join them. "What took you so long?" said Stanton. "Yeah," said Maria. "We've been waiting for ages." "We had a bit of a revelation," said Fran. When Maria looked at her quizzically, she added, "Elgin was afraid he might have lost his talent." She looked at him to make sure he didn't mind, then went on. "It turned out that he hadn't lost it, only forgotten exactly what it is. Now he remembers, and it's okay again." Maria nodded, but it was plain that she didn't completely get it. If she was going to pursue it further, it was interrupted by a rapid series of bangs that stopped conversation throughout the square. A short silence was followed by a spate of nervous laughter. Then the talking quickly built up to a roar again. "How much longer is it going to do that?" she asked. Elgin was going to answer, but Stanton beat him to it, explaining that they could estimate how long it would go on, but that they couldn't say for sure when it would stop. "We estimated that the whole thing would take 3 hours," he said, "which means that it should be over about now." Maria nodded. "But we can't say whether or not that was the last loud one. It could be, or there could be more." "So it's kind of like the stuff about probabilities that we're learning in school," she said. "F.A. probably 3 hours?" "Yes, that's right," said Stanton. "As a first approximation, it will last 3 hours. But there is an uncertainty that keeps us from setting a definite time." Tomas interjected. "It's really two different things, isn't it?" He was slightly abashed when everyone looked at him. "I might have misunderstood," he ventured, "but I thought the 3 hours was for the comets to come to rest. Then it said there could be settling in and so on for an indefinite period." He looked at Stanton for enlightenment. "No," said Stanton, "you've understood perfectly. In fact, I thank you for reminding me. The 3-hour collision time and the indeterminate period of seismic activity should be looked at as two separate things." Maria was looking proudly at her father, and smiled happily when Stanton told him, "This is the kind of trap that we have to work hard to avoid in our job." Stanton cocked his head, gazing into the distance. "Excuse me," he said. "It's a status report." He turned away from the group to be polite. Just at that moment a cheer went up from all the children in the square. Buzzard had entered and swooped up high, and was turning around, scanning the crowd. He was obviously looking for them, but he was distracted when all the kids, including Maria, went flying up to join him. They surrounded him in a loud, happy bawl that gave brief glimpses of his delighted grin. Finally he flew out of the mob and led them off around the upper reaches of the square. They quickly formed a single file, following Buzzard and mimicking his every move. "Hey," said Elgin, "that's what they did with me at the swimming hole." Stanton said, "They look like a flock of little ducklings following their mother." Then as they were traversing the far yellow end, Buzzard pulled up, and the flock gathered around him. They huddled there for a while, looking at the yellow column closest to Fran and Elgin's rooms. Then Maria peeled away, and came flying back to them at full speed. She was excited and stammering when she got there. "Whoa," said her father. "Take a breath and rein that horse in." Maria visibly got a grip on herself, then reported succinctly. "The column is cracked." She looked at Fran. "The one by your apartment. It's got a crack right through it." They all followed her back over, and every kid there wanted to be the one to point it out to them. They had to get quite close before it was obvious as a crack. From a distance it was easy to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but up close it was definitely a crack. That's all it was, though, just a crack. There was no displacement in the pillar itself, which still looked straight and true. Everyone ran their hand over it, but they couldn't feel any discontinuity. Stanton, ever the engineer, soundly smacked the ice on both sides of the crack, but it was solid. The lottery woman said, "Can you fix it?" Stanton looked at it, tipping his head one way then the other. "I suppose we could," he said. "We could inject water into the crack and make it less obvious." "Less obvious?" she said. "Can't you fix it like it never happened?" "No," he said. "These columns are grown in a continuous process. No matter how well we hide the crack, it will never be the same." "Oh," she said. "Does that mean replacing the whole thing?" "I'm afraid so," he said. There was a lull while they contemplated the size of that task. Then Fran cleared her throat. "There is another option," she said. Having their full attention, she said, "We could just leave it." That raised a small wave of surprised comments. The lottery woman summed it up with, "Wouldn't that be dangerous?" Fran looked at Stanton, who said, "No, not at all." She was incredulous. "But it's cracked," she said. Yes, he said, but it's still sound. He smacked it again. Any repairs would be purely cosmetic. He could see that she wasn't convinced by the way she was doubtfully eyeing the length of the massive pillar. Look, he said, it's not as if it's holding anything up. He raised his eyebrows, smiling. Oh, said the woman, remembering. Of course. Even as she was floating in the air, she still instinctively assumed there was gravity, especially when looking at this kind of sturdy architecture. She still had a question, though. Looking at Fran, she asked, why would you want to leave it cracked anyway? Fran hadn't got that far yet. All she had was a feeling that it would be a good idea. She quickly asked herself the question and came up with a couple of answers. For one thing, she said, it would be a reminder of the amazing thing we did today. That was greeted by general, if unenthusiastic, assent, but it wouldn't be enough to convince any doubters. The woman asked, is there anything else? Yes, said Fran. Because this is the yellow end, it can be kind of symbolic. Symbolic of what? That would be up to each person, said Fran. Most of us lost someone to Yellow Comet, or know someone who did, and we all have feelings about it. She swept her hand, taking in everything. This is Yellow Comet when you come down to it. I think this crack could be a reminder for people. A tribute to the people of Yellow Comet. Okay, I see it. But what makes leaving it damaged a better tribute than repairing it? Either would be a good tribute, said Fran. In many ways, repairing it might be the better one. I just have this feeling that a visible crack might be more poignant. A reminder of the fragility of everything, that nothing is perfect. And it could serve as a sort of touchstone if it's right here, visible and accessible. This time the general assent was more pronounced. Heads were nodding among the adults, while most of the children were simply waiting for whatever the decision would be. Stanton spoke it for everyone, his voice a little husky, with his personal Yellow Comet memories. I think it's a great idea, he said. It will be nice to have some place to come to remember. It was clear he was struggling with his emotions, and it proved to be contagious. The adults were quiet for a few moments, a few brushing away tears while the children looked on, mystified. Stanton cocked his head again. Go ahead, he said, but everyone knew he was talking to someone else. Okay, good. He was nodding. Where? He said, a small frown starting. Are you sure it's in the gallery? Okay. Keep a crew on that until you track it down. His expression cleared. Good job. Let me know, he said, ending the call. He looked around at his companions, his mind still elsewhere. What is it, Stanton? Asked Fran. Is everything all right? Yes, said Stanton, coming back. Yes, everything's okay. He looked at Elgin. That was the head of the damage patrol. He says your struts held up fine. My struts? On the flashball court? Yes. They haven't found any serious damage anywhere. Only a few slow leaks that they're patching now. Except there's one in the flashball gallery that they're having trouble isolating. Everyone thought about it. Then Elgin said, that gallery doesn't have a contiguous ice seal, does it? No, said Stanton. Parts of it are just packed snow. Elgin nodded. Maybe a rift developed behind the surface. That could cause a diffuse leak that would be hard to pinpoint. Right you are, said Stanton, turning away to make a call. People were looking at Elgin, some with worried faces. He quickly said, there's no danger. They'll seal off the gallery and fix the leak. Maria spoke up. Elgin? Yes? Do you think we could look at the video of the swimming hole now? The kids close enough to overhear said, yeah, and that attracted the others who crowded around. Elgin said, right. Everybody's here now, hey? I think this is a good time to do it. The children cheered, and Elgin selected one of the smaller monitors and called up the swimming hole recordings. I think we should run it at high speed, he said. It's too close to bedtime to watch it in real time. He even sped up 60 times. It was slow for the children. It took a while to even be able to see that the sphere of water was moving, but once it did, it was worth the wait. There's something intrinsically funny about a big blob of water wobbling and splashing about. The kids were laughing anyway. And each time a big slosh was impending, they held their breath with anticipation and released it explosively, laughing at the antics of all that water. There was a sense of satisfaction and disappointment as the action wound down. "Play it again." Elgin wasn't surprised to hear that, but he was surprised that it came from behind him, and not from the kids. "Yeah, and put it on the big screen," came another voice. He turned around and found that a lot of the people were looking his way. More voices called out for a rerun, and someone started chanting "Swimming hole," which caught on right away. "Okay, okay," said Elgin, putting his hands up in surrender. He switched the feed to the big screen, the view from behind, where they could see the sphere move away and into the far wall. He put the other angles on some smaller screens. There was a round of applause, and soon everyone in the square was watching. Next to Buzzard's smoke rings, this was the big hit of the whole affair. When it ran down and the crowd demanded he start it over, Elgin complied, sharing a look with Maria. She looked proud and happy. Fran slid her hand into his. "I don't know about the rest of you," she said, "but it's been a long day for me." Tomas agreed. "What a day it has been, too. Thank you again, everyone." He held out his hand for Maria. "Good night, all. See you in the morning."